Hi there, I'm Phil Lipoff. We want to get right to our top story. We have major developments in the war in Ukraine. President Biden has authorized Ukraine to use long-range missiles inside Russia. Officials are telling ABC News at this hour. Ukraine has been lobbying, as you know, for a long time to allow the use of these kinds of missiles, but Biden has specifically prohibited their use since the start of the war. It marks a major escalation in this conflict, and it comes just hours after Russia launched one of its largest missile attacks against Ukraine in months, targeting power plants and energy infrastructure across the country.
Well, we knew the liberal globalist order would not go quietly into the night, didn't we? And so Biden has decided to bring us to the brink of World War III. So what does all of it mean? Why is the Biden administration doing this? And where do we go from here? Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you make some sense out of all of this insanity. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's dive right in. It's now being widely reported that the lame duck President Joe Biden has authorized Ukrainian forces to use attack missiles inside Russia. These are U.S.-made long-range missiles. They can travel upwards of nearly 200 miles. Ukraine has had them for some time now, but they've not been permitted to use them by Washington. That ban on their use has now been officially lifted, which means that we may indeed be seeing U.S.-made long-range missiles launched into the very heart of Russia. Now, this is an obvious major escalation in this war, and it comes just after President-elect Trump won a landslide victory campaigning on ending this war. Now, one of the major reasons why this is so concerning is obviously the warnings that are coming out of the Kremlin. President Putin has made it absolutely clear that the Russian Federation will not take such military escalations lightly, and that they will see such strikes as entailing a whole new level of U.S. involvement in the conflict. Representative Tom Massey responded to this insanity with this, quote, "By authorizing long-range missiles to strike inside Russia, Biden is committing an unconstitutional act of war that endangers the lives of all U.S. citizens. This is an impeachable offense, but the reality is he's an emasculated puppet of a deep state." Very well said, Representative Massey. So what is going on here? Why on earth is this declining, degenerate administration that in effect just lost the election by a landslide? Why are they escalating this war in view of Trump's incoming administration? I think there are several interlocking things to keep in mind. They're all interrelated. First and foremost, I cannot see this as anything other than a last-ditch effort at emboldening the dying liberal international order. By manufacturing a renewed threat from their perpetual enemy, Russia, NATO is trying to reinvigorate the alliances and institutions that comprise the dying globalist regime. Now, we've talked a number of times on these videos about a number of pundits have observed that the Ukrainian conflict really did mark the end of globalism and the end of what's called the liberal international order. The economic and institutional safeguards that were set up by the collective West after World War II to prevent something like Russia's invasion of Ukraine were shown to be completely impotent and powerless and ineffective in an increasingly multipolar world. Russia's political and economic alliance with a parallel world centered around Beijing and Mumbai and the OPEC nations in the Middle East were simply too strong and effective to overcome despite the blitzkrieg of sanctions launched by the collective West. So this appears to me to be one last-ditch effort by the globalist powers that be to try to reassert at least the perception of their dominance over this situation. I think it's going to fail. Make no mistake, I think it'll fail big time, but I think it is an admission that they recognize that the only recourse they have left to hold on to the liberal international order that's slipping through their fingers is to basically bring the world to the precipice of a World War III. It's insane. But if you could believe it, that's where the absurdity actually just begins. Waiting to see what they're trying to do to President-elect Trump. But first, gang, let me ask you, what do you think you could do if you had the same insider trading information that Nancy Pelosi has? Right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Politicians like Pelosi have had access to insider trading secrets for decades now. They know exactly what stocks to buy and when to buy them. But guess what? You and I actually have access to that very same inside information. Thanks to a little-known SEC database, we can see what and when corporate CEOs are buying up in real time, and then we get to piggyback on their trades to gain the same advantage for ourselves. Gang, that's why you've got to click on the link below and sign up for a free training with me and my good friend Ross Givens. It's this Thursday, November 21st at 3 p.m. Eastern. Ross is an insider trading expert whose recommendations have led to investment returns of over 200%. Some have hit as high as nearly 1,500%. It's going to be an amazing free training where you and I can learn how to trade with the exact same insider knowledge as these politicians, but legally and ethically. But don't wait. Seating registration is limited, so click on that link below right now and register today, and I'll see you for an event that promises to change your life. Now, the irony in all of this is that as the Biden administration was in the process of escalating this war, even the New York Times is admitting that the war in Ukraine is lost. There's no way around that. There is no viable path forward for Ukraine to win this. They cannot possibly get any of their lost territory back. There is no way that they can get any kind of leverage over Russia at all. This whole endeavor is completely lost. Again, keep in mind, this is the New York Times admitting this. And the Times is saying that Trump should try to negotiate a peace as quick as he possibly can, which, of course, he's already pledged to do. The problem is that this escalation is going to make that peace agreement all the more difficult. And again, I think that was the intention. If the assault on Russia escalates, then inevitably the demands that Russia will make as part of the peace negotiations will proportionally escalate. Again, the key here to understand where we are in all of this is that Russia's completely decoupled itself from the West, institutionally as well as financially. The collective West really can do nothing to harm Russia's economy. They can do nothing to harm its geopolitical alliances. Russia has very strong allies. Russia is completely in the driver's seat for the terms of negotiation. Ukraine and the collective West have no leverage. None. Zippo over Russia. You have to understand that. Russia is entirely in the driver's seat for negotiations, which means that Russia gets to set the terms for peace. And the problem here is that the more the collective West escalates this conflict, the greater Russia's demands are going to be to end it. So we can thank Biden for making peace now all the more difficult to negotiate. But to make it even worse, what Biden's really doing now is a lame duck. As someone who won't even be in office literally weeks from now, thank God, Biden is deliberately attempting to destabilize the Trump administration, or better, destabilize the world that he's going to be inheriting. Biden and his fellow globalist elites are not just trying to revitalize the institutions and alliances of the liberal international order. They're also deliberately trying to undermine, weaken, sabotage, and disrupt the Trump presidency by intentionally saddling the incoming administration with a diplomatic crisis. Trump is now the president-elect, and there is a long-standing protocol that the outgoing administration work hand in hand with the incoming administration to ensure a smooth and peaceful transition of power. And you don't deliberately saddle that incoming administration with an orchestrated international crisis that the incoming administration campaigned on wanting nothing to do with. So if you ever wanted to know how evil and vile this managerial class of liberal international elites are, here you are. Here it is. And it's even worse because in deliberately trying to destabilize the incoming Trump administration, the Biden people have destabilized our nation. And they've done so by destabilizing, again, perhaps the central ceremonial embodiment of our republic, which is the peaceful transference of power. The Biden team, whoever's calling the shots, they are self-consciously interrupting that peaceful transference of power and as such destabilized our republic. Now, what's so interesting here is, and keep this in mind, this is not the first time they've done this. I mean, you might remember this, but just days before Trump took office back in January 2017, the then Secretary of State John Kerry helped orchestrate radically controversial resolutions passed by the UN Security Council against Israeli settlements that redefined the legitimate boundaries of the nation of Israel to pre-1967 cartography, which completely sponged away any leverage that Israel would have in negotiations with the Palestinians. Now, regardless of where one lands on the issue, a one-state solution or two-state solution, regardless, it was a clear slight against the incoming Trump administration. Trump was completely locked out of those negotiations, and they tried to impose on his incoming administration a Middle East map of their making, not his. Again, just literally days before the doors would be hitting them on the way out. And then, as if that weren't bad enough, the Obama administration expelled 35 Russian diplomats in response to the Russian collusion hoax, in response to the supposed Russian interference in the 2016 election, which he knew was nonsense, which destabilized relations with the Russian Federation. And then Obama signed all these 11th hour regulations in the final days of his presidency. He banned oil and gas drilling across large swaths of the Atlantic and Arctic oceans. He closed off over 1 million acres of Western land to development. And then he scrapped a registration system used largely on Muslim immigrants. And this was all done in the shadow of Obama making a smug comment that were he able to run for a third term, he would have beaten Trump. I mean, so, to be honest with you, this all raises the question as to whether Obama or Obama's people really are the ones who are still calling the shots here in the Biden White House, because they've done this before. This is not the first time an administration with a Biden in it deliberately tried to destabilize the world for an incoming Trump administration. It's absolutely disgraceful and disgusting. But unfortunately, it is par for the course for a class of completely pathological, narcissistic bureaucrats who actually believe they're humanity's highest hopes. So we'll obviously keep an eye on how things play out here. I, for one, believe Putin recognizes exactly what's going on here. He recognizes that this escalation is a sign of desperation. He recognizes that the globalists know their time is up. This has been his goal the entire time. Putin has accomplished his goal of destroying the unipolar world order and ushering in a multipolar world order. And I pray he'll be very measured in the way Russia responds, as he has been the entire time, regardless of what the collective West does. Let's all pray that cooler heads will prevail and that the new administration in D.C. is able to broker a real and lasting peace for the foreseeable future.